Chalk to the gills of preseason with the good, the bad, and the ugly. Certainly out of week one, but it was good to have the NFL back in our lives. Good to have you guys back for the next 3 hours. I know we're going to put on an entertaining show for you. We have all kinds of reaction from my trip down to Atlanta where the Titans bested the Falcons in preseason action. A lot of legitimate takeaways, some good conversation, some good audio that you'll hear from Mike Vrabel, Rashad Weaver. We got all kinds of people. And Chester Rogers, who had a massive game against the Falcons in the return game specifically, and certainly helped solidify himself on this roster. He joins us at 12:20, so stick around for that. We're going to have the voice of the Titans, Mike Keith, at 11:20. He was on the call, of course, when Lucas played the audio of the sack in my ear during his update. It made me smile. Nothing makes it feel more like football season than the sack call of Mike Keith. We could hear it, Lucas, from the press box.
He was building up. It was months of build-up.
You.
He didn't get to do it that often last year.
No. That's how you're going to start this today.
Well, I'm sure they were very excited to relinquish that first sack call.
That is just off the top rope. Here everybody is basking in the radiance of Rashad Weaver. And
yeah, he got to do it 5 times on Friday.
Wow, look at you. Spicy to start this Monday. You're right. He was like a volcano getting ready to pop its top. That first one, I swear to God, we looked around in the press box. So not that many people made the road trip. It was me, Jim Wyatt, Ben Arthur from the Tennessean, and Teron Davenport from ESPN. So we're sitting there. It's us. It's the team's PR staff. And all of a sudden, like at the very start of the game, we hear the Mike Keith sack call whilst Rashad Weaver is making a sack. And I'm like, I was in the Titans radio booth about an hour ago doing pregame with Jim Wyatt, which was a lot of fun. Lucas did a great job on Titans radio. I endeavored not to embarrass myself. It's been a long time since I've had to talk in like short analysis sound bites like a professional, but apparently we didn't get kicked off the air, so that was good. So I was in that booth not an hour before kickoff with Jim Wyatt, maybe 20 minutes ago. I know how far away that booth is from where I'm sitting. I know that there's a soundproof door between the Titans radio booth and where we're sitting. And still in my ears, I hear Mike Keith yelling sack, and it warmed my heart. It really did. 615-737-1045 is how you get involved over the course of this morning and into this afternoon. A lot to get into. Plus, big news out of Knoxville with an announced top 3 from the nation's top overall high school recruit. Got the Vols fans even in their feels this weekend. That was exciting for them. We'll let you hear that audio later on in the show. But I want to know what stood out to you in this preseason game. What were your takeaways? What did you like? What did you come away thinking, man, that really, really needs to get its stuff together, whether it be a position group, an individual, something you saw from the coaching that you didn't like? What were your takeaways from this preseason game? 615-737-1045. We're going to talk about it over the course of this morning. I'm going to tell you what I feel better about and what I feel decidedly worse about, and then we'll also get into a list. There was a list put out yesterday. I thought we were free and clear of list season, and yet the NFL Top 100 plagues my television screen as I'm getting ready for primetime last night. It was an unwelcome surprise, but something that I found a way to justify it, which is about as dirty I've felt about sports content because I found a way to make this list legitimate. We'll tell you that later on in the show. Captain Trips on YouTube. You can interact with the show, of course, on Zone TV, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook Live, and Twitch. Captain Trips on YouTube says, I hated that we couldn't stop the blitz up the middle. Lucas, at some point, we should have thought of this before the show, but Mike Vrabel in the postgame was not happy. He was not thrilled with the way that his former defensive coordinator came after Logan Woodside. I believe he said, well, they blitzed the bleep out of him. And, I mean, that safety, there was a couple. He took a handful of sacks, Logan Woodside did, but there was a couple where he just got straight up decleated. That safety screaming up the middle. And honestly, it's on Woodside because he's got to read and recognize that faster. He did get rid of it, but not nearly quick enough before he just got he got that dude in his face mask. It was ugly. And Vrabel was not, I don't think they had adequately prepared them for Dean Pease trying to come out and alpha Logan Woodside in a preseason game.
I wonder if a conversation was had afterwards.
I didn't see one because I was watching. Because we all noticed this too. I'm like, Logan, like the backup offensive line, and we'll talk about this later in more detail. But it was not good, even though I saw some positive things from Dylan Radins. And we'll talk about that this morning as well. The way that they came out like after Logan Woodside, we're all looking around in the press box like, what are they doing?
Their beef?
What is it? What's happening?
The pregame proceedings were all very friendly. A lot of people, hadn't seen each other in a while.
Everybody's taking pictures.
So many connections.
They're shaking hands. They're kissing babies on the sideline. And then immediately, we didn't get the disrespect on the logo like I was hoping for. But then they must immediately have walked to the opposing sidelines, and Arth just looks at Dean and goes, "Let's get him," because they came after poor Logan
Just
Woodside.
a slight nod.
Yeah, we had a handful of places. It's the first time we've done in-person post-game interviews since the Kansas City AFC Championship game. Since January of 2019, this was the first time that we've had an in-person post-game appearance.
The last time Dean Pease called a game as the Titans defensive coordinator.
Well, no, because
allegedly
that was Baltimore. Look at you. Who are you? Who hurts you? You're coming after the Mike Keith and the sack. The amount of sack calls that he had last year?
Don't characterize that as coming after Mike Keith and the sack call. Mike Keith is a legend. The sack call is a legend. I didn't come at anybody. I just stated a fact.
You sure as hell did. You said he didn't get to use it a lot last year.
That's not coming after anybody. That's stating a fact. He got to do it 5 times on Friday. He got to do it a total of 19 times in 16 games last year.
I heard 2 of the 5 from my seat in the press box while I was shoveling self-serve ice cream into my face. COVID could not take down the Atlanta press box Carvel machine. Thank God. Some things need to be held sacred in this life. 615-737-1045. What were your primary takeaways, the good, the bad, and the ugly from preseason game number 1? We would love to hear from you over the course of today's show. So there's a lot of stuff to dissect, but more importantly, I mean, the story of the game was Rashad Weaver. The story of the game was the defense, not just because, I mean, you understand that going into this preseason game, the concepts that are being run are going to be very basic. All right? But more than anything, what we were looking for, or at least what I was looking for, what we talked about pregame when we did the show from Atlanta and I was working off my Magic City Wings hangover that I had, and I didn't bring back any for Blaine Bishop. I know he's going to be upset with me when there's not Magic City. The Lou Williams meal waiting for him when he walks into the studio today. But the defense, it was the storyline on Friday and will continue to be the biggest theme of this season, right? There's 2 things that you're looking for in this game that you start with first and foremost. I know everybody wants to watch offense. I know you're waiting to see stuff from Marcus Johnson, which didn't happen in this preseason game. After all the camp hype that he's had around him, I have a great analysis of that for you later on in the show. I know the one reason why Marcus Johnson did not show you the kind of things that he's been showing everybody at practice over the course of the last couple of weeks. But the defense was the story, whether it be Rashad Weaver and how active he was up front. Now, Atlanta's backup offensive lineman appeared to be pretty wretched. And watching chest tat A.J. McCarron try and dink and dunk his way down the field was a bit of an atrocity. He cannot move back there, so he was not a terribly mobile target for them to pick off. But the point is they got there. They bothered him. They made him uncomfortable. The pass rush was what I was looking for first and foremost out of this game. And the fact that they ran a bunch of defensive starters out there, Kevin Byard, Jack Rabbit, Rashawn Evans, Jayon Brown, all of these guys. I did not see Jeffrey Simmons out there. I did not see Danico Autry. And unfortunate that Trayvon Coley, who was probably defensive lineman, if they ended up keeping 5 defensive linemen, he was probably 4 or 5 going back and forth with that spot. And Laurel Murchison, who's, now has an even greater opportunity to step up. The defense, though, their ability to get pressure and the way that they got off the field on 3rd down, it was refreshing. It's been so long since they've looked that kind of competent, and they found ways to handle it against a team that really didn't look like it had its stuff together. That's the thing that stands out about Mike Vrabel most, right? It may not look clean, totally clean with Woodside and Matt Barkley. It may not be, the best version of themselves, but they played not only to execute the situations that they've been practicing and ones that they need live game reps to really experience, stuff like penalties. You'll hear from Mike Vrabel on that later on in the show. The way that they were able to execute and come out and play better, top to bottom, than a team that they're clearly more talented than. That's what you're looking for in this preseason. You're looking for guys to take what you've seen them work on the practice field and implement it in a game-like situation. That's exactly what they did for the most part. There are also some people who took a step backwards out of this particular. It's not all sunshine and roses. Darrington Evans, my God. At what point is his health going to stop being a part of the discussion? I understand there is luck involved in injuries in football and that it is a violent, physical, brutal game. But for as much as that continues to be a factor, at some point you have to question how much he can legitimately give you, or if there is an option behind him, Jeremy McNichols or Brian Hill, Mekhi Sargent, who had a good game, whether you have to explore other options because he's just not available. And then there's Des Fitzpatrick. My God. They practiced yesterday. And after Vrabel, he said he didn't intend to send a message by calling Fitzpatrick out, and we'll have that audio for you later. He said he didn't necessarily intend to send a message when on Saturday, we all come back from Atlanta. We meet with the head coach at the podium. That's all that we're going to do that day. And he was asked, what does Des Fitzpatrick have to do to get more snaps? Because he didn't play that entire first half. It took a while for him to get in there. Guys like Mason Kinsey getting snaps over. Cam Batson. That's not how your fourth-round pick should look, no matter how difficult the transition is from college to pro. That cannot be acceptable. And it's not being accepted right now based on the tone of the head coach when he says he just needs to show us a lot more in practice, and left it at that. Now, he kind of couched it a little bit yesterday when we had some follow-ups for him on that because he did not start out practice well. Jim Wyatt, I tweeted out some observations that they were running. You know what? We'll save this for later because I want to expand on the Des Fitzpatrick conversation more. I want to continue to talk about this preseason game, what I liked, what I didn't like, what you should be concerned about, what you should be pleasantly surprised about. And then we'll talk about the NFL 100 because the Titans have 3 players on the list. And people want to get into it, even as much as I despise the lists. I'm Buck Rising. This is 104.5 The Zone.
There's only one place to get Ron Slay.
Because what we about to do as the SEC is take over. I'm telling y'all, man, y'all better be on the lookout. It's Trash Talk Friday, and I'm talking. We're going to get up there to the top. We got the best cut man in the corner, Josh Heupel. We're gonna be okay.
Brent Doherty, Dawn Davenport, and Ron Slay take you on a sleigh ride during your drive home. The 3HL, today, starting at 3 on 104.5 The Zone.
Of course, this being the flagship home of Tennessee Titans, of the Tennessee Titans Radio Network, you can hear their game, their preseason game, on Saturday against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers right here as well. We will have all manner of pregame coverage for you. Everybody killed it on Friday, so it was, I know it's some of the parts have been moving around over the past 6 months or so, but it felt Titans Radio lived up to the standard that they set for themselves, and we will have the voice of the Titans, Mike Keith, on later in the show. We'll ask him whether he realized that he is able to be heard through a soundproof door in the press box. One of the more impressive parts of Mike Keith's game. 615-737-1045. Coming out of that game in Atlanta, which positions did you feel better about? What did you come away with saying, you know, this group, this position, this individual player, I feel solid about where they are at this point in the season. I feel solid about how this individual or this unit can help contribute to the success of the football team. And then on the opposite side of things, because there were some things to take away that can be called into question. And we'll spend some time on that here in just a second. But I think ultimately, I want to hear where people are kind of gravitating towards. It feels like we've already had a full week in between the preseason games, so this isn't necessarily reaction that you guys haven't already had, but I do think it's important to continue this conversation and break it down as they head to Tampa this week. I'm heading down to Tampa tomorrow. We'll be down there all week long, courtesy of our friends at Scoreboard Bar and Grill, the largest selection, the world's largest selection of bushwhackers. There's food, there's music, there's sports. What more can you ask for? So we're very grateful for our friends at Scoreboard Bar and Grill who have made my coverage from Atlanta possible and all week from Tampa Bay. We'll be doing the show live down there from practice. I'll see if I can't throw a microphone in front of Brady's face or if somebody's going to like come out of the woodwork and like tackle me like bouncer, or not necessarily bouncers, but like security people at a stadium when there's a streaker on the field. Like I feel if you get within Brady's gravitational pull, if you're within 100 yards of him, somebody just comes and takes you out. So we'll see if that's indeed the case. 615-737-1045. For me, I think more than anything, you know, I felt good about the defense. I felt good about Rashad Weaver. And honestly, I felt good about Logan Woodside. That, I think, was called into question several times because the offense started out kind of clunky. The protection was not good. Like, he was getting roughed up back there. And again, Dean Pease clearly came out with the intention of making Logan Woodside uncomfortable by, in Mike Vrabel's own words, blitzing the bleep out of him, is what he said in his post-game press conference after the Atlanta game had concluded. But I felt good about Logan Woodside operating a basic offense against a base defense, a defense that's not trying to scheme anything crazy for him. And then, you know, I saw some of the criticism from Logan Woodside about his early snaps, about maybe he shouldn't have taken that sack, or he didn't take the sack against the blitzing safety. He got rid of the ball, but again, he got just absolutely brutalized back there. And you got to have the self-awareness to know when to get rid of the football, because if that dude's coming in a real-life game, you could end up on the turf. And there were a handful of injuries to come out of that game, specifically with the kickers. Tucker McCann, they didn't miss a kick. Preseason kickers have been awful all throughout the course of the first week. It has been an overarching theme across the league, and the Titans kickers were perfect. And then, of course, Tucker McCann late in that game gets rolled up on, and Vrabel saying he was pretty sore on Saturday. He was not out there practicing yesterday. So Sam Ficken may have an opportunity to come to him again because Tucker McCann, like Darrington Evans, can't stay healthy. It's unfortunate, and you hate to see that happen in a game with zero consequences, zero impact other than a preseason game, other than you're trying to workshop your craft in front of a admittedly sparse crowd. A lot of Titans fans down there. A lot of people made the trip. 615-737-1045. I think what I ultimately feel better about is the depth on the defensive side of the ball. I saw Breon Borders have a near diving interception. He's had some practice apparently from all the inaccurate balls that he was picking off with Deshaun Kaiser while he was here in Titans camp. That one got overturned ultimately, but Vrabel was very complimentary of him after the game. You feel good about that guy as potentially your fifth corner, right? That's where the math becomes complicated as well, not just at the receiver position. If Caleb Farley gets on the field, you're talking about Caleb Farley, Jackrabbit Jenkins, Christian Fulton in no particular order, and then Elijah Molden. That's your four corners right there. And you would think you have to find a way to get Christian Fulton on the field, even as he seemed to come up a little bit lame in practice yesterday. It was later in practice when he ended up leaving, but he did experience some kind of discomfort that saw him get pulled from what was basically a jog through 11-on-11 session at the end of the Sunday practice. But then there's Elijah Molden, and then you're at Breon Borders, and that's probably your cornerback room. You feel great about that if you're somebody who cares about the strength, the improvement of this Titans defense. That unit clearly has more ability than it did a year ago. And what's going to help them is the increased pressure up front. T.R. Tart was a problem. Again, against 2s and 3s, I get that, but you can only play the competition that's in front of you. T.R. Tart playing the nose. You saw some plays from Laurel Murchison, who was active as a kind of defensive end. They can move him around up front. You saw Rashad Weaver get snaps at both as a hand-in-the-ground defensive lineman and coming off the edge as a rusher. He, of course, had a fantastic game. The level of competition is not, it's definitely worth tempering your expectations about. But it is okay to come away with feeling good about the way that they were able to perform. So we did not talk to Rashad Weaver after the game. We spoke to him yesterday at practice. And Rashad Weaver kind of let us understand a little better about what changed for him. Because he's come under some criticism, maybe not necessarily criticism, but the coaching points have been, when we talked to Vrabel or when we talked to Ryan Crow, the outside linebackers coach, they've said that he tends to overthink things. And that certainly did not seem to be the case Friday night in Atlanta.
I mean, honestly, after the game, I was kind of confused because in my college games, I was nervous before college games, but I was, super relaxed out there. I was just like, there's nothing to lose. Go out here, have fun, play, and show what you got, honestly.
Why do you think that was?
Again, I think just kind of getting the green light from Braves and my coach to just go hard, go play, and we'll fix the stuff on film. I mean, when someone tells you that, when they just want to see you play hard and effort, and you can just go out there and run around full speed, you make good things happen, and it's easier to fix the stuff later.
So that's Rashad Weaver speaking with us yesterday at practice. He felt comfortable out there. Whether it was not a hugely pressurized environment, right? But this is his first, as close as he's been to NFL game experience. These games still mean something to a lot of players on that roster. I mean, just look at David Long, who we'll have tomorrow on the radio show. Really, really interesting character in this defense's makeup, right? Understanding what the linebacker room looks like right now and how dramatically it could change because both Jayon Brown and Rashaan Evans are going to hit the market after this season is over, pending some kind of extension if both of them elevate their play substantially. It seemed like they were okay in the offseason, potentially moving on from Jayon if the market got too high. Now, the contract worked out perfectly in their favor, and they were able to sign him to one of these voidable years deals to keep him around for an extra season. But certainly, you did not feel like there was a bunch of tension in the stadium. It was still a competitive environment, but it was not something that would overwhelm a rookie out there playing in his first game. He seemed to feel comfortable in that. The more comfortable they can get him, the more he can focus on what's in front of him and refine his technique. It's going to be massive for them because not only can he play out on the edge, he can play across that defensive front. It's why they were looking at him as an interior guy at the Senior Bowl, not as an interior guy full time, but seeing whether he was able to do it or not and how willing he was to do it or not. The more value that guy can come up with for himself, it allows them to be more flexible with the numbers on game day. That's what this ultimately comes down to. How much can these guys do across the board at their various positions that allows you the flexibility to potentially add another player on the 46 active game day roster that may not be as versatile but can still serve a purpose? It's how you end up changing the math on 3 active linebackers, outside linebackers on game day, like they did a year ago. If Rashad Weaver can be that third guy but also move across the front, it allows you to get more flexible with your numbers on the defensive side of the ball. You feel great about Rashad Weaver more than anything else more than anything else that you watched on Friday night, you feel great about what that player, understanding the legal situation continues to loom over him. Nobody is ignoring that fact. But if you are talking about from a strictly on-the-field sense, that is a player that can put in legitimate work for you and make a difference against guys who may be borderline starting offensive linemen. We'll see how he looks against pros soon enough. There will be plenty of time for that. In the meantime, he passed the first test that you needed to see from him as a 5th-round pick. Now, they got other issues with their draft class, not just this one, but last year's as well, that we'll talk about later on in the show. But I think more than anything, if you're to kind of take the opposite approach and look at the negatives on this, the backup offensive line, you can't work with that. You can't put Ryan Tannehill behind a collection of those guys. Now, listen, there were dudes who started on that offensive line on Friday night that I had no idea were on the roster until I looked at the depth chart once they trotted out there and we kind of figure out who was the starting offense. We had a moment in the stands pregame where we went down because we're still not, it depends on stadium to stadium, right, where media is allowed to roam. But we had a moment in the stadium on Friday night where in Atlanta, we're not allowed down on the field still. Only essential personnel and like broadcast crews allowed down on the field. That's fine. We'll make it work. So we're running around the lower bowl, where I saw a lot of people who listen to this show, by the way, and a lot of people who watch the A to Z show. It made me very happy. I hope to see all of you guys out at the Nissan Stadium practice from 5 to 7 today. I know 3HL is going to be broadcasting live. I'm going to be down there with 3HL for my weekly Monday segment. So we look forward to seeing all of you, and it made me very happy that people came up and said something nice about the show. And even the people that came up and said something not nice about the show. That's okay. We appreciate it. But while we were roaming the lower bowl, trying to get as many pregame videos as we can of like guys coming out of the tunnel, you know, your first look at the backup quarterbacks in uniform, your first look at some of the rookies as they're making their way out on the field, you know, Arthur Smith and Mike Vrabel at midfield, all this kind of stuff. We just happen to be standing in a section where there's a bunch of players, like family, friends and family in the stands. And one of the moms comes up to me and Teron Davenport and Jim Wyatt because we're all down there in the same section. And she says, hey, she's asking us basically to move because we're standing up and impeding her view and her family's view of the players coming out of the tunnel. And, of course, happy to move. She says, okay, who's your son? She says, Ross Reynolds. And I said, Josh Reynolds? She said, no, Ross Reynolds. And then sure enough, Ross Reynolds is out there as the starting left guard. I'm like, I had no idea that was a person until the other day. Respectfully. That didn't sound terribly respectful, did it?
Ross Reynolds, not Josh Reynolds.
Well, I mean, I felt bad because, like, Teron and I had a moment. Hopefully this does not get back to the family of Ross Reynolds.
You mean Josh? Like she got her son's name wrong?
No, there's a player on the roster called Ross Reynolds, and he played left guard for this team on Friday night.
And it's not Josh Reynolds with a mustache.
That is correct. There's a substantial difference in both size and skin tone between Josh Reynolds and Ross Reynolds. I was able to discern that much. So hopefully this does not respectfully get back to the family of Ross Reynolds, because Teron and I looked at each other like, who? Who is this? So you understand that the backup offensive line right now, Daniel Munyer at center is a problem. He's playing center right now because whatever's going on with Ben Jones, they don't want to put him out there even in practice. That was the case again yesterday. So they're trying to make sure that they preserve the bodies of the veterans on this team. But ultimately, you are looking at the backup offensive line with a wary eye and saying, okay, how many different positions can Dylan Radins play? Because I thought he got beat as a guard early on in that game, gave up a sack, got pushed back into the quarterback, and then the player in front of him made a play. But when he played the majority of the snaps at right tackle throughout the rest of the game, I thought he looked competent. You were comforted a little bit by the progress that you saw him make at the position that they ultimately have designs on him playing. At least in this year, at least providing competition. The rest of it, though, I have my doubts. Daniel Munyer has to figure out how to get a snap off without causing problems with the quarterback and the quarterback center exchange. It's been a nightmare out there on the practice field for him and Ryan Tannehill working together, while Ben Jones has been bubble wrapped somewhere in the facility. So those are the two things that I specifically feel better about, feel more comfortable about. And one specifically that I feel worse about. I do also feel terrible for Darrington Evans because that was something Lucas brought up pregame in our show on Friday. That this was going to be that a tweeter had pointed out this was going to be the most opportunity that he gets throughout the course of the year is during the preseason, right? He's gotten all the reps at practice, basically. Derrick Henry hadn't been doing a lot outside of the sandpit because they're trying to keep him on a shelf too until they need him. So Darrington Evans, healthy all throughout the first couple of weeks of camp, questionable to return with a knee injury, never comes back into the game, doesn't practice yesterday. Unfortunate. It continues to be a storyline. And we've seen this happen to plenty of good players. It doesn't mean that Darrington Evans is a buster. It doesn't mean that you can't salvage him as a player. But look at somebody like Marcus Johnson, who has spoken himself about how soft tissue injuries bogged him down in previous stops with previous teams. Comes out here on the practice field. He spends enough time with the quarterback to get comfortable, to be trusted. He's able to ball out. That may be the future for Darrington Evans, but right now the storyline with him continues to be the injuries.
That was the biggest negative, right, from Friday.
Oh, without a question. Without a question.
There's that Twitter account, NFL Injury News. So doing the scoreboards for Titans Radio, I'm keeping up with it, seeing if there's anything from the Bills game, anything worthy. All of it is Titans. All of it is Jimmy Wyatt, Trayvon Coley, Darrington Evans, Tucker McCann.
Oh, on the NFL injury stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, Trayvon Coley was unfortunate. Tucker McCann, unfortunate. Darrington Evans. I mean, honestly, like, you survived last year without Darrington Evans. I don't mean to diminish him, but I'm just saying, like, there is precedent for that before. You've seen Jeremy McNichols give you good snaps. You are comforted a little bit by the depth there, not by Brian Hill. I wasn't impressed with Brian Hill, but I thought Mekhi Sargent played really, really well and with great effort out there. But then you look at Tucker McCann and you're like, not this again, right? Just when you think he's starting to find his groove, he's been fairly accurate at practices, both him and Ficken. Whenever they do the kicking drills in practices, they don't miss a kick, or a field goal, or an extra point in the game. You're looking at the Titans kicker situation. You're looking at the rest of the league, and you're saying, wow, how big a juxtaposition is this? How the tables have turned.
It was just torrid luck, because I heard Mike Keith and Coach Mack talking about it on the broadcast. It happened last year when Brett Kern was out for a little bit, and McCann's competing to be the starting punter that week, and he gets hurt and has to be ruled down to the practice squad.
Yeah, so there's a lot there that just comes down to unfortunate luck. And that's a part of this business too. You have to be able to make those cold decisions, regardless of how many involve bad or good luck, how many involve, just basic morality. If the guy can't produce, if he can't be available, you have to find a solution immediately. And that's been the case for those two players, which is unfortunate because that's what you've been following a good bit. When we come back, we're going to do something every Monday coming off the NFL weekend because we had a full NFL weekend. Even in the preseason, there was a lot to take away. We're also going to talk about the first round. There's 5 first-round quarterbacks out there playing snaps throughout the course of the weekend. A couple of them, well, actually, all of them potentially, that the Titans could see over the course of their season. We'll talk about that as well. Coming up next, though, winners and losers from the NFL weekend. If you want to nominate some, you are more than welcome to. 615-737-1045. Lucas and I will react to that coming up next. I'm Buck Rising. This is 1045 The Zone.
Want to listen to the Titans on your smartphone?
Gonna run Henry. Finds room up the middle. He's to the 35 to the 40. Midfield. 40, 30, 20, 10, 5, end zone. Ladies and gentlemen, 69 yards. Derrick Henry. Touchdown! Titans!
Get Mike Keith and Coach every Titans game by downloading the 1045 The Zone app.
professional prowess of Mike Keith. Just trip all over myself. Back shoulder action for Logan Woodside to Cam Batson after Woodside almost attempted to get him killed. That ball that was behind him, Lucas, I don't know. How much did you watch the game and listen to the radio broadcast? How did that work for you?
So we have the game on here in the studio, but obviously the radio broadcast is far more up to date than the television feed. So, yes, it's about a 15-second delay. So I get to hear Mike Keith describe the play call as he does so eloquently and then watch the play on the TV.
Okay, so how did Mike Keith describe the play where Logan Woodside almost got Cam Batson killed?
Oh, gosh. That I don't know off the top of my head.
It was a throw, a slant route across the middle. The throw was well behind Cam Batson. He had to reach back to try and get it. Couldn't haul it in, and there's two defenders just screaming at him. Every time I see Cam Batson get hit, I'm scared that he's going to spontaneously combust. Every time. He's such a small dude, and he goes out there and just gets lit up, but he will make a play on third down from time to time. That's why that wide receiver room is so competitive. You know, I saw Joe Rexrode tweet out on during the game, because Mason Kinsey was great. Mason Kinsey had a great game on the offensive side of the football. We haven't really talked about the wide receivers yet. But Mason Kinsey and Cam Batson probably duking it out for that true slot receiver spot if they're going to keep one of those guys instead of a versatile dude if Des Fitzpatrick can't find a way to play all three positions and learn how to do that, which we'll address later on in the show. Then Mason Kinsey and Cam Batson, that becomes a legitimate battle at the back end of the wide receiver room. But with Cam Batson, he gets up every time. God bless him. And he was giggling at the podium, straight up giggling when we asked him about Logan Woodside getting lit up, because I guess they had a moment where they looked back at him like, man, you all right? It looked like it hurt. Not all of them faults of the blocking assignment, although the blocking in front of him wasn't ideal. 615-737-1045 is how you jump in on the conversation. 615-737-1045. I want to do winners and losers of the football weekend. I want to do that every Monday. I think there was a lot of funny footage that came out of this weekend in sports. Certainly this weekend in football. We'll do that here in just a second, but I got to remind you that 1045 The Zone Summer Golf Classic is Friday, August 27th. At Champions Run Golf Course, and tickets are sold out, but you can sign up today to get on the waiting list in case tickets become available. To get on the waiting list, visit 1045thezone.com/Summer Golf Classic today. A special thanks to many of our great sponsors, Edley's Barbecue, Brentwood Jewelry, Comprehensive Security, Uptown Male Spa, so many others that are making this Summer Golf Classic possible. The first one was a lot of fun out at Champions Run, so I hope to see a lot of you out there, even if you got to get on the waiting list to do so. Winners and losers of the weekend in football. I mean, you have to start, right, with Bears fans. Justin Fields looks good. He looks really good. How long do we think it's going to take before Bears fans start putting pressure on people about getting him in? If Dalton goes out there and starts 1-2, or if Dalton has a bad half,
I imagine that pressure's already there.
People are going to start screaming at Matt Nagy about get QB1, this joke that you put out on the team's Twitter account right after Dalton signed. Get QB1 the hell off the field. Get us Justin Fields. I'm looking at Trevor Lawrence right now as well, who played okay. He was every picture, though. I was going through USA Today's pictures of all the preseason games from the weekend, and every picture I saw of Trevor Lawrence was him just getting contorted or twisted up because he was getting the hell beat out of him. He looked like he had a bit of a Logan Woodside experience. Welcome to the NFL type deal. But Bears fans absolutely celebrating, naked in the streets, basically, about the performance of Justin Fields. Tua, on the other side of things, he didn't look good. Teams that could still be in the sweepstakes for Deshaun Watson's services, pending he doesn't go to jail, which just kind of happens to be hovering over the Texans quarterback situation. But I saw good things from Justin Fields. I saw good things from a lot of the rookie quarterbacks. We'll talk about those guys more specifically coming up next. But as far as people who were able to succeed and able to show out on the national stage when a lot of these games are being carried on NFL Network across the board, I was really, really impressed with the work I saw out of Justin Fields. Trey Lance had the splashy, what was it, an 80-yard touchdown that got everybody going. And then outside of that, it was just kind of meh. There was a lot of people that played in the first preseason game, by the way. Tom Brady? What the hell is he doing out there?
Everybody played for the Bucs.
Yeah, which Bruce Arians said they would. I thought he was full of it.
Nope.
So why the hell is there 44-year-old? I'm laughing because Mike Vrabel turned 46 on Saturday. I'm looking at Mike. He's 46, 2 years older than Tom Brady, who's out there in a preseason game, the first preseason game with all the starters. That was wild to me. That, honestly, losers are anybody who's going to that Tampa Bay Titans preseason game, because you know if they played him in the first preseason game, there's no chance you see Brady on Saturday, which is unfortunate. But he'll be out there trying to dice him up all week in practice. That's basically what the preseason game is for these guys, these joint practices that are coming up on the field Wednesday and Thursday, and we'll be broadcasting live from those. Loser, I think you have to start with that Rams fan. I'm just going to call him Fat Aaron Donald because he was wearing an Aaron Donald jersey that was very not, looked like Aaron Donald let himself go a little bit, respectfully. So if you haven't seen the video that goes viral, Chargers playing the Rams in the new SoFi Stadium. First time that fans have been in SoFi Stadium. And so immediately, because nature is healing, sports fans are just beating the holy hell out of each other. It's not even opposing sports fans in this particular case. It's Ram fan on Ram fan crime. Now, we would play for you the video. I don't think it necessarily translates to an audio medium, and there's probably enough expletives in there that it would be a problem for us. But the footage of this thing is ridiculous. And how many different elements of this are funny? Not that we would advocate for violence. But you start with this dude getting held back, Fat Aaron Donald's getting held back from a feud with like 4 other Rams fans in front of him, sitting in the row in front of him. His buddy's holding him back. This goes on for like 10, 15 seconds. And then all of a sudden, a woman from behind the 4 or 5 Rams fans in that front row, she just, I don't know whether she was related to the people who were fighting Fat Aaron Donald. I don't know whether she was just somebody who wanted to see a fight, who wanted blood. Maybe there was not enough blood sport for her out on the field for a preseason game, so she got to spice things up. But this woman from behind the 4 Rams fans just throws a full Coke at Fat Aaron Donald, and that sets him off. So he straight up smacks the whole row of the Rams fans in front of him. Like it's just a full sweep.
And then she runs away.
She runs away.
It's like when I do something on your Twitter account and then skedaddle out of there for the mentions to blow up.
Just roll the grenade out into the middle of things and then take off into the darkness. That's what this woman did. Dan Lust, who's the sports entertainment lawyer who's been on the show, been on the station a couple times, he was tweeting out the legal analysis of this because there's precedent, right? The dude who threw the cup at the Malice in the Palace. There's legal action that could be taken against this woman with precedent for starting the fight. So she starts the fight. Fat Aaron Donald smacks the whole row of fans in front of him. And then all of a sudden, he just gets buried. He gets pulled in. He gets pulled in by the 4 of them. Everybody's throwing fists. There's a dude behind Fat Aaron Donald that's trying to get the fight away from him, puts both feet on Fat Aaron Donald's butt and pushes him forward into the fans in front of him, where he just continues to be waylaid. Now, I hope Fat Aaron Donald is okay. But, oh, my God, if anybody lost the football weekend, it was that guy. Because that turned quickly, head on a swivel. We'll come back and we'll talk about some of the preseason action, some of the rookie quarterbacks that we saw, all 5 of the first-round guys that the Titans may see in the coming season, as well as the AFC South. Because what happened in that Colts-Panthers game yesterday, I thought was very interesting from half to half. That's coming up next. Don't forget, Mike Keith, voice of the Titans at 11:20. Wide receiver Chester Rogers will join us in the noon hour today. Stick around. It's 104.5 The Zone.
The Titans are in Tampa against the Super Bowl champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Yeah, it's the preseason, but hey, it's Tom Brady. Mike Keith and Coach Mack have the kickoff Saturday night at 6:30.
Throws a man down and goes out of bounds at the 40.
On your home for Titans football and flagship for Titans radio, 104.5 The Zone.
to go on the remainder of this radio show. We're excited to have you along for the ride for the next 2 hours. 615-737-1045 is how you jump in. Better get in soon because the voice of the Titans, Mike Keith, is going to be here, and we will break down in great detail preseason game number 1 against the Atlanta Falcons. What he liked, what he didn't like, whether he realized that we could all hear his sack call from down press box row about 50 yards away. Man's got some pipes. We also welcome your participation on Zone TV, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook Live, and Twitch is where you can chat with the show. We've had many nominees for winners and losers of the football weekend, which we look forward to making a regularity on the show now that we have football Mondays. This is the first football Monday. It feels so good, even if it's preseason, as they're showing Trevor Lawrence highlights on First Take right now. That was really the focal point. Outside of watching, whichever team you're a fan of, the vast majority of you obviously Titans fans. A lot to take away from that game against the Falcons. But outside of that, the biggest attraction, right, was all these first-round rookie quarterbacks. And then you got to the funny. Outside of the football, you got to the funny because winners and losers of the sports weekend, Lucas, we got a lot of people nominating Tim Tebow. Oh my God. And not even the missed block that he went viral for, which technically was a successful block because he diverted the guy who was in front of him by just physically being in his way. But Tim Tebow, I think he's out there blocking with his eyes closed. He does not appear to be aware unless he's just that light now to where these defensive ends are picking him up and just tossing him, or he's bouncing off of them like they're Teflon. Tim Tebow had a tough weekend. Whatever he can do in the red zone, if there is something to do with him in the red zone, if there is a special package of plays for Tim Tebow that Urban Meyer would like to install, it's entirely possible. But what I saw over the weekend from Tim Tebow at tight end, get this man off the Jags roster. There's no place for it. It continues to be a circus sideshow, but at least one that we can laugh at on Monday mornings after these highlights continue to surface. The rookie quarterbacks, though, with Trevor Lawrence, I thought on the whole, because the 5 first-round quarterbacks coming out of this year's draft, whom the Titans may all see, between Mac Jones, Zach Wilson, Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, Trey Lance, in no particular order, they all got some action in this weekend. I thought Mac Jones really looked the best out of them. I was watching that game on Thursday night after we wrapped up the A to Z Sports Prime Time show, and I thought that Mac Jones looked pretty comfortable out there. 13 of 19, 87 yards. He took a sack, no touchdowns, but highly efficient was the way that I would describe him, which is really all they're trying to be right now. You saw, if you're paying attention to what's happening in Patriots camp, former Titans tight end Jonnu Smith got tangled up at practice yesterday, may miss some time. Hunter Henry is already on the shelf for them. So they may need a little more juice for all the money that they spend in free agency to kind of bolster the offensive skill talent around him. But Mac Jones, I thought, was the best of them just because he operated the most cleanly. I thought Trevor Lawrence was probably the worst, to be honest. And that's not, he may have jitters out there. He's been the chosen one since the time he was a high school recruit out of Georgia. 6 of 9, 71 yards. He had a fumble. He took 2 sacks. He had a nice touchdown. To Marvin Jones. Excuse me, not a touchdown. He threw a 35-yard pass to Marvin Jones that Marvin Jones had to dive up in the air to get. But it was, he looked a little disoriented out there. Like he was getting beat up pretty badly. So I think a lot of that was just jitters. Now, Justin Fields probably the most spectacular, where Mac Jones was not spectacular, but efficient. I'm watching Justin Fields highlights right now. The escapability in the pocket, the ability to extend the play. He's physically bigger than the defensive lineman out there. This dude has to have, it does. I saw Bears fans on my timeline over the weekend just drooling over what this guy's potential could be and how quickly it's going to take Bears fans to start clamoring for him out there. Zach Wilson, I didn't see a ton of the Jets. I did see that Corey Davis played, but there was nothing really of the highlights that I saw from Zach Wilson. It just looked like he was out there operating an NFL offense for the first time with new teammates. It wasn't anything crazy.
Attempted 9 passes.
Yeah.
All pretty routine. But because the reports coming out of that, Wilson probably had something to lose with this game because the reports have not been good at a Jets training camp.
Well, who's the backup in New York?
Not Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco's with the Eagles.
Yeah, who played a lot against.
He did?
He played a lot again because the Eagles had one of the first preseason games. He played quite a bit on Thursday night, and dinked and dunked. And Joe Flacco looks like a dinosaur in this day and age of football. 615-737-1045. If you want to jump in on the conversation, 615-737-1045. Which of the rookie quarterbacks impressed you the most? Not just the one that plays in the AFC South. Did you have takeaways about these rookie quarterbacks? The AFC South quarterbacking situation is fascinating, too. Jacob Eason looks bad, guys. Jacob Eason appears to be terrible at professional football. I saw our buddy Mike Miracles, formerly of Broadway Sports. I hate that Mike is hanging it up, but he's focusing on his he started a business, and he's got a family now. So Mike Miracles no longer working in a capacity with Broadway Sports covering the Titans, which stinks because he's one of the smartest out there that was doing it. But what he said about Jacob Eason being Zach Mettenberger sent me. Because they have all of the same characteristics in personality as it appears that they do on the field. Sam Ehlinger in the second half of that game against the Panthers for the Colts looked really strong. It may very well be Sam Ehlinger if they can't get Carson Wentz out on the field week 1. 615-737-1045. Who won the weekend in football? Who lost? Whose stock went down the most? 615-737-1045. Let's go to Darrington. It's always good when he joins the show. What's up, my man?
Lemon pepper buck.
Woo!
Man, was it really good?
It's the best wings I've ever had. It was barbecue sauce with lemon pepper seasoning and a whole baked potato as a side. That's the Lou Williams meal at Magic City. Unbelievable.
Now, you know what's crazy now? Now, you are my winner and you're my loser for the weekend. The fact that you Ubered it makes you a loser instead of because you should have been there. I was there Friday night during the game.
Oh!
I enjoyed every bit of it.
Yeah, look at Darrington out here killing it. Listen, I would have my girlfriend has participated in Magic City Mondays before when she used to live in Atlanta, so I would have had precedent to be able to go. But it doesn't work on both sides that way, Darrington. You know that's not how it goes down.
Well, since the Titans won, that should have a refill of lemon pepper Lou.
Yeah, a little bit of lemon pepper Lou. That was the truth. What you got for me?
Oh man, it's gonna be. Hey, today's gonna be a great day. I actually want to see though this defense in the scrimmage with this week, and the reason why I say that practices, I think this is going to be the actual challenge, and I'm going to need you, Buck, because you're going to be the have to really see this in the fruition. Now the scrimmage, the preseason game, hoopla, but the scrimmage between the trenches is where the real work is at. So I'm looking at your observations to get a real outlook of what's going to be happening. I'm going to need your eyes and ears open for me, Buck.
My guy, I got you. I'll be down there. I'm leaving tomorrow for Tampa Bay, and the Titans will have their joint practices Wednesday and Thursday against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We'll be tweeting out all kinds of good stuff from the social accounts. Make sure you're following 104.5 The Zone on Instagram and on Twitter or on all of the social platforms because we're everywhere, and they're producing great content from it, courtesy of our friends at Scoreboard Bar and Grill who bring us my coverage from Tampa Bay all week long. They will also bring us an interview with Chester Rogers, Titans wide receiver, who will join us in the noon hour. But coming up next, it's the voice of the Titans. The man who was on the call on Friday night will be on the call Saturday in Tampa Bay and throughout the rest of history, it seems. Mike Keith will join us coming up next. We'll see what his observations were, what he liked, what he didn't like, and what he thinks this work against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers is going to be like, considering that I asked Taylor Lewan about it yesterday at the podium. Lewan, who got that work against JPP when the Buccaneers were up here for joint practices. I believe it was pre-2019 season when Jameis Winston was still the quarterback. Lewan, who got, in his own words, put in a blender by JPP during those joint practices, because I asked him, what are you going to enjoy about this the most? And he said, what do you mean enjoy? It's going to be a bloodbath. I'm going to go to the beach. What are you talking about? So we'll talk to Mike Keith about this bloodbath and the preseason game number 1 that was coming up next. Stick here. It's 104.5 The Zone.
The Titans play 4 preseason quarters against Tom Brady's Super Bowl champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And your flagship for Titans radio has the game.
Comeback foiled.
Saturday night at 6:30 on your home for Titans football. 104.5 The Zone.
of time, or he so chooses. Mike Keith joins us now here on 104.5 The Zone. You got one in the book, stud. How you feeling coming off a Friday night?
We got work to do, but it was good to be back doing preseason. A lot of the trick, and I may have mentioned this last week, and I apologize if I did, is we hadn't done a preseason game in 2 years. So we sort of had to go back and review how the things that you need to get ready for that. The preseason, from our standpoint, is more difficult to do than the regular season, because once you get into the regular season, you very much know all of your guys. I mean, you know Henry and Tannehill and Brown and Simmons and so on and so forth. And you kind of really know the other teams too, because you've been watching them on TV during the course of the year. I mean, I know who plays for the Colts and who plays for the Texans and so on and so forth. Well, you start the preseason and, you got 18 guys not going to play who you know. So you're having to sort of build all your boards and do everything very differently. I'm getting into sort of nerd territory.
No,
here.
people love this, Mike. Please go ahead.
But it's just a different. You just prepare differently and you forget how to do it. So I thought from that standpoint we did a pretty good job. But I got a bunch of stuff to work on. I got to get better. So hopefully we will this week.
So as opposed to making a 2 deep or a 3 deep like you might in the regular season or for a playoff game, are you making like a 7 deep for every position, Mike?
No, I actually don't do that, Lucas. I don't even build a standard board for the opposing team because I'm just trying to catch it as I go, due to the fact that to do that, you would have to write so small you couldn't see it. And that's the difficulty. What I found in the past is I've just found to make, kind of 2 sets of larger print notes and keep them in different places because there are so many people you can't fit them on one piece of paper. And I'm big on having everything right in front of me. And it's one of the reasons that calling, I think, pro football is so much easier than calling college football. It's because there are fewer players. I mean, even in the SEC, when they go on the road, they still take 70 guys. We have a pretty good idea, some people that are going to be out. So when you build a board in the pros, you're building it with less than 50 guys normally. So it's, from that standpoint, it's much easier to see. The other thing, too, is you have some challenges about guys going in and out because Derrick Henry's not really coming out of the game. Maybe for a play on 3rd down. Ryan Tannehill's not going out of the game. You may have guys going out of a preseason game at any point.
Right.
Which is just crazy. You look up and you're like, who is that? And the beauty of duplicate numbers, which I think should be outlawed.
I mean, it's the worst part of it. As soon as you said how much easier the pros are than college, that's the first thing that came into my mind, Mike.
Vastly
duplicate
different.
numbers.
Yeah, the college announcers have a much bigger challenge than the pro announcers do. The duplicate numbers thing, that's a horrible thing. I just
picture you in the booth shaking a fist at the duplicate numbers when they're trotting out the field.
They should allow even, this is a rule that ought to be passed, that even retired numbers should be allowed to be used in the preseason so that you don't have duplicate numbers.
I think we can get behind that movement. We will start a petition for Mike.
A lot of the traditionalists would go crazy, and the families of those who've had their numbers retired probably wouldn't like it. But just for the purpose of preseason, I don't see what it would hurt.
Mekhi Sargent wearing 27. How'd that look?
Yeah.
Well, now that you say that, I don't know. Maybe you'd have to put 27 on somebody and playing defense. That would be okay.
Mike Keith, voice of the Titans, here with us on 104.5 The Zone. Ever the critic of himself, but still a very, very exceptional broadcast, and was glad to have it back in our lives, Mike. Did anybody tell you that we could hear two of the 5 sack calls from our seats in the Atlanta press box through the soundproof door? How long has that been building up over the offseason?
I thought you were going to say you could hear it back in Nashville.
No, I heard you on Media Row.
In Nashville, you could hear. Because, I mean, let's face it, we didn't have to use it very much last year. So, it was fun to see pass rush. I mean, it was so much fun to see pass rush, to see defensive linemen getting rush, to see outside linebackers, to see blitzers. I think the great part of it was Weaver's the one sort of getting the most attention, and probably rightfully so, but Wyatt Ray had a good game.
Yeah.
Ola Daney was in there. Before he got hurt, Trevon Coley was putting pressure on. You saw several guys getting heat on the quarterback, and that's a good sign. Listen, none of the guys that were playing offensive line for Atlanta are going to Canton. I understand that. I get it. But at the same time, you're winning. The other thing, too, is I thought the front end and the back end of the defense were working in concert. There was good coverage. There was rush, and let's face it. You can get on Mike Vrabel for saying it all goes together, because that's just an answer that nobody wants to hear when you're not getting pass rush. But the fact of the matter is, if a guy's open in 2 seconds, coming off the line of scrimmage, Lawrence Taylor's not getting there. Reggie White's not getting there.
Right.
Bruce Smith's not getting there. You have to have both. At the same time, too, a defensive back can't cover for 18 seconds. It can't happen. So you've got to get pressure. I thought we saw both things out of the defense together. I think we saw guys make some plays on the ball. A lot of what we've seen in practice carried over, and I think that was the best sign, is that the communication was there. They didn't allow third down conversions, which was a good thing. So overall, I thought, very solid backups against backups performance for the Titans on Friday night. And that's what it was. There was no Matt Ryan. There was no Calvin Ridley. So you can't say everything's fixed. But what you can say is backups against backups, the Titans were superior.
Yes, and depth is one of the biggest questions
Sure.
that at least I had going into this season, because you're right. I mean, the numbers and just the makeup of that edge rushing room right now, Mike, is so different than it was a year ago, where Wyatt Ray can have a game like that because he's not necessarily being relied upon as a primary option on Sundays. He's a fine fourth or fifth option of a group of guys that seem to have a variety of different skill sets. But you're right. I mean, everything seemed to gel together on that side of the ball, understanding that it's basic concepts that everybody's running, except if you're Dean Pease, who, in the words of the head coach, was blitzing the bleep out of Logan Woodside during the first half of that game. 2 of 12 on third down for the Falcons. That's a number that everybody can look at and understand that there's at least progress being made on their base principles.
Well, they can go back and they were. They were sitting in meeting rooms yesterday, and they're able to look at that, Buck, and they say, okay, here's what we did well.
Yeah.
And if you're the first string or you're the second string or you're a guy fighting to make the team, conceptually you can look at that and say that's an example of what we did well and of how you do it. And you can build on that in a positive way. And that's what you're really taking from this. You're taking that experience and you're trying to build on it. The other thing, too, that I think is really important, yes, it was backups on backups. That's really what the game was. But the fact of the matter is, those guys are going to play at some point this year. It's going to happen. It's going to happen in the offensive line. It's going to happen in the defensive line. It's going to happen in the secondary. This is what you get into. The more capable you are, 1 through 53 or 1 through 48 on game day, the better off you are. And that's a big deal.
Mike Keith, voice of the Titans, here with us on 104.5 The Zone. Also check out the great content that the Titans radio crew is producing on the official Titans podcast, presented by our friends at Farm Bureau Health Plan. Subscribe, rate, and review wherever it is you get your podcasts. They've been doing a great job with that. I know I know Coach Mack and Amy Wells have a podcast of their own coming out. So you guys continue to pump out more content. It's very exciting if you are somebody who is a fan of this team. Mike, going back to Rashad Weaver, though, before we talk about some of the negatives coming out of Friday, was it noticeable to you at all in game how at ease he looked? Because he spoke to that yesterday, and I thought going back and watching this game a couple of times, he looked comfortable out there on Friday night, just from our perspective. But then going back and watching it, I mean, he really looked at ease out there amongst these kind of backups that you're talking about.
He did, and he did a nice job, and he played so many snaps that I think it gave him the ability to get into a groove, which is often one of the big challenges about preseason is you're going to go out and you're going to play 2 or 3 series, and then somebody else comes in. They left him out there because they really didn't have a lot of guys, and also they wanted to get him to work. They wanted to be able to gauge where he was, and I thought he played very relaxed. I thought he played smart. I was very impressed with what he gave, and he was a guy that they were working on some specific things with last week, and I think he took the coaching points, and he built, and he's continued to build like Radin's in the offensive line. He's continued to build.
Yeah.
We're seeing it out of Farley with the limited stuff that he's getting to do right now, but he continues to kind of build. So really good thing. Yeah. And Weaver is, you don't want to sort of go nuts yet because, again, it wasn't, Tony Baselli or Jonathan Ogden out there blocking him, Joe Thomas.
Decidedly not.
No, and again, I'm not meaning to criticize in terms of that player's an NFL player or somebody trying to make an NFL roster, and I give credit to that, and that's not being mocked, but that's not who he's going to see week in, week out in this league trying to get to the quarterback.
On the opposite side of things, Mike, I was a couple of takeaways on the offense, at least for me. I thought Woodside, after he made a couple of mistakes, some passes that were behind the receivers, I thought he rebounded very nicely with that back shoulder throw to Cam Batson. And I thought he really as much pressure as was being brought his way. I know there was a lot of criticism of these backups on the offensive line for the Titans, and that's understandable because these guys this was not the starting offensive line for Tennessee. But what did you make of the quarterback's performance, both Logan Woodside in the first half and Matt Barkley operating in the second half?
I'd say they both get a passing grade. I didn't see, a lot spectacular. I didn't see a lot of horrible mistakes at the same time. The drop snap in the Barkley situation, I don't know whose fault that was, but that can't happen. That's not an NFL play. Woodside, on at least 1 or 2 occasions, you got to get rid of the ball. You got to get it out of there. You can't stand there and hold it. But then, he did have some pressure in certain situations because that line is not used to playing with one another to the point where, like a Saffold and a Lewan and a Jones and a Davis and whomever else at right tackle has the communication skills to pick all that up. Clearly, Dean Pease was trying to heat some things up.
Yeah, what'd you think of that? I was surprised.
Nah, I mean that's how I think Dean wanted to go after the Titans a little bit, which is fine. But I think the other part of it too is he's trying to set a tempo for what they want to be. He's trying to set a mindset. He likes to blitz. I mean, one of the first interviews I did with him, he's very good friends with Jerry Sandusky, who's the voice of the Baltimore Ravens, and Jerry had told me early on, this guy likes to blitz getting off the bus.
Yeah. And
I asked him that question, and Dean was like, "Oh yeah, I do. I like to blitz from the the hotel lobby before we get off the bus." So I think in Dean's case, that's who he is, and I think he's trying to get the Falcons used to that. Now, did he have a little something for Vrabel? Sure, he did. Yeah, of course he did. I mean, that's the way this goes. Those guys, they want to beat each other. That's part of it. So, I think he did the Titans a favor too, because now they go back into that room with Todd Downing and with everybody else, with Luke Steckel, the tight end coach, and with Mike Sullivan and Keith Carter in the offensive line room. And you look at that. You go back and you look at that and you say, okay, what did we hand off that guy wrong? Did we pick up the wrong guy? What did we need to do? That's the benefit of this. Back to the point about, what the defense did well. Some of the things the offense sees, I think, is a really positive thing, particularly going into these practices against Tampa.
Mike Keith, voice of the Titans, here with us on 104.5 The Zone. Mike, the question came up for Vrabel about lack of snaps for Des Fitzpatrick, and his answer on Saturday was not much different than his answer yesterday when we kind of followed up with him about it. But how long should it be before people start to get concerned about a guy who, I don't know whether it's through lack of urgency or he's being asked to do a lot right now, learning all 3 of their positions across the board at the wide receiver. But Des Fitzpatrick was not something – I was not expecting him to lose snaps to Mason Kinsey is basically what I'm trying to say.
When they put him in as the gunner on the last punt, too.
Yeah.
And then Vrabel said what he said. I mean, I don't know that he's unnoticed about, not being with the team or anything like that. But clearly what's being said is he's got to up his intensity level in everything he does. And sometimes I think what guys don't quite get when they make the move to this. And I mean, if you saw him play at Louisville, he can play.
Oh, sure.
I mean, the guy's got some serious tools. He's a nice kid. He works hard. There are things there. I mean, he can help this football team. But the big thing that you learn when you get to the NFL is you're not playing football anymore. This is your job.
Yeah.
And everybody has to fight every day for it to be their job. Now, you look at Mason Kinsey at this point. This is his second training camp. Mason Kinsey gets that if he's going to have any chance to make this roster, everything he does matters. Everything. Every single snap matters like it's life and death. And once you're here, whether you're drafted or you're undrafted, you have to take on that mindset. Sometimes that clicks in more quickly with some guys with others. They're not giving up on Des Fitzpatrick. That's not happening. But I think he's gotten a message that he's got to step up the intensity of what he does in everything that he does. Nobody in the NFL, nobody is on scholarship.
Well, and certainly the scrutiny was there yesterday after Vrabel's postgame comments because I was watching GM just hovering over the wide receiver position in that first routes on air drill that they were throwing, 3 straight drop passes for Des Fitzpatrick. I know he rebounded later in the day yesterday, but it was something that the scrutiny is certainly there. Mike, man, I appreciate you joining us. I know that you had a lot going on. I know you were cranking it out with SiriusXM yesterday as well, but we are so happy to have you guys back on the call. We look forward to hearing you guys down in Tampa Bay, and we'll certainly catch up with you down the road. Thanks as always.
Thanks for the kind words, and thanks to everybody who listened to us on SiriusXM yesterday. Appreciate the kind words there. That was a lot of fun working with Mark Dominic. It was exciting. It was a good thing. A lot of people are interested in the Tennessee Titans nationwide, which is fun.
Look at you. You love to see it. We're getting ready to talk about this top 100 list coming up next, Mike. So I'll get into national scrutiny about the Titans here in just a moment.
Okay. Thanks, Buck.
Mike Keith, a pleasure as always, here with us on 104.5 The Zone. All right. There's Vols stuff to talk about. You got a Vols athletic director guaranteeing titles. Oh, God. Why? Why do they do this to you? This is the kind of ex that gaslights you in the worst way, the University of Tennessee. It comes with some positivity, though, because the nation's #1 overall high school recruit put Tennessee in his top 3. You'll hear from Walter Nolan coming up next, and we'll talk about Danny White and this godforsaken NFL top 100 list. I'm Buck Rising. This is 104.5 The Zone.
A.J. Brown, Bud Dupree, and Caleb Farley. You hear them on the exclusive Titan station.
104.5 The Zone.
Brett Doherty here. I want to talk about a new mobile brake repair service that I'm really excited about called New Brakes Mobile Brake Repair. New Brakes, that's NU Brakes. We'll send a full-time certified brake tech to your home, office, or wherever you are to fix your brakes on the spot. You've got summer road trip plans and your brakes are old, worn down, or squeaking. Have New Brakes come check them out before you leave. And the best part is they only work on brakes, so you're never going to be upsold on auto repairs that you do not need. New Brakes only uses premium brake parts, warranties all of their work, and provides an unmatched level of customer service. Why would you ever waste your time sitting around at a dealership or brake shop again? I know I won't. It's convenient, affordable, and they're backed by thousands of 5-star reviews. Simply head to newbrakes.com. That's nubrakes.com to request a quote, choose your repair date, and they come to you.
top, getting closer to their season as well. So exciting to have football back in our lives. But I don't know how Vols fans feel today because they got some good stuff from Walter Nolan, the nation's #1 overall high school recruit. He moved to Knoxville. He's playing high school football there. He has said, well, I mean, what was the circumstance that this audio was from, Lucas? Because this was from Rick Russo in Knoxville. He put it out there on social media. I did not understand necessarily the context for why Walter Nolan was being interviewed at this particular juncture. Do you have any of these details?
I'm pretty sure it was some type of jamboree held in Neyland Stadium. Like, this type of thing happens a lot. There was one in Chattanooga just the other weekend with a bunch of local Chattanooga high schools playing out scrimmages. I think that's what this was, as he now plays for Powell High School, which is in Knoxville.
Right. So now you have Walter Nolan. He's living in Knoxville. He's going to Powell. He's playing in jamborees at Neyland Stadium, and it's got the Vols fans all riled up. Rightfully so. This is it at least puts you as a university, as a program, in the conversation for a prized recruit, especially on the defensive side of the ball. This man's a defensive lineman. He's a massive human being. You need something like this so badly if you're to start to rebuild this program on both sides, not just try and cover up your deficiencies with offense, quarterback play, and scoring. 615-737-1045 if you want to weigh in. So here's Walter Nolan. What was this, on Friday? Friday or Saturday? Saturday was the jamboree. Saturday, the media catches up with Walter Nolan. He's a hilarious individual for reasons that I will describe after you hear what he had to say about the University of Tennessee.
Yeah, at this point, Tennessee in my top 3, and we're going to see where it goes on from this season.
Who else is in the top 3?
Tennessee, Florida, and Texas A&M.
So Alabama's out.
Yeah.
Why were you wearing Alabama shorts then the other night at the scrimmage?
That's closed, man. What you going to do?
How did it feel walking out on the field tonight?
Oh, it felt good. I mean, I can see myself doing it again more than one time, but really more than 3. I feel like being here now, I can see it as probably maybe calling their place home in a couple months.
That is Walter Nolan, the nation's #1 overall recruit. Tennessee in the top 3. Uh-oh. He's gaslighting you. How many Vols fans? So how are Vols fans consuming this, right? Like, how are they looking at this? Are they excited about the prospect of just being in the discussion? Are they immediately defaulting to cynicism and saying, oh, how long until he gaslights us up until the point where he chooses Alabama as his future collegiate stop? It is, I will say there's probably equal parts in that for concern and for, excitement. You like that this player is in the city that is recruiting him, that is trying to recruit him, that has found its way from top 10 to top 5 to now top 3. But Walter Nolan is somebody that's going to have all of the options available to him. There is a football season to be played. He's going to have opportunity on defense if he chooses to consider legitimately, as it seems that he is, the University of Tennessee. But I don't know how many Vols fans just immediately, don't get their hopes up because they've been through this before, and it's not the first time that a situation like this has arisen. Even as down bad as they have been over the past calendar year, basically, I think most people are trying to moderate their expectations.
I think people are very optimistic, though, and with good reason, because there's a lot of things that kind of point in Tennessee's favor. Not just that he plays his high school football there. His head coach, Marlon Walls, played defensive line at Tennessee. He was the #1 defensive tackle in his recruiting class. You imagine they're pretty close in his development when his head coach played his position at the school that's recruiting him as hard as it is. And Tennessee wasn't even in his top 8 months ago. We're talking about a top 8 where the Vols weren't even involved. Now they've worked their way into the top 3, allegedly. Alabama is out of it, which nobody really expected, though he said in the video wearing Alabama shorts the other day. But it's closed. What are you going to do? But no, I think people have every right to be optimistic. Rodney Garner, your defensive line coach, might be the best recruiter on this staff and the best developer on this staff. There's no question Rodney Garner is the most valuable piece of Josh Heupel's staff in Knoxville. And if he can land Walter Nolan, especially facing everything Tennessee's facing, NCAA violations and so forth, all the challenges in front of Heupel, I don't think you can overestimate how huge of a get that would be for a guy where recruiting was probably the number one concern coming in.
So how does Walter Nolan feel about expectations for his prospective new program? That's what his potential athletic director just did. Danny White. So Danny White's on The Nation with Austin Price and Chris Lowe on Sunday. And he's talking about, a variety of topics. He's clearly exuding confidence. Danny White, an exceedingly confident individual, which I'm sure you like a little bit of swagger. How you thought about the way that he came in and started to change things in his direction, in his line of thinking. He was asked about the Vols' ongoing NCAA investigation. He couldn't comment on it. On and on and on it goes. But this is the quote that really caught my attention. And it's okay to believe this, but once you say it out loud, it takes on a life of its own, right? Quote, I know we're going to win national championships, and I know we're going to bring our football program back where everybody wants it to be. Now, that's all well and good. That is Danny White's stated mission. Do you think that he does himself any harm by saying the words, I know we're going to win national championships in year one before his team takes the field, before they potentially struggle to win 6 games? Do you not think he sets himself up for more scrutiny from Vols fans who are already going to be breathing down his neck a little bit because they're tired of rebuild upon rebuild? They're ready to see some kind of product on the field. If his product on the field does not, in year 2, live up to the expectations that he's now set for himself, like he can't be talking about like a 5-year plan. How many Vols fans are sick and tired of hearing about a 5-year plan? When you say national championships, when you say you're going to win national championships, fine. Maybe you like that. But it also brings an additional scrutiny on him that wasn't there prior to those words being uttered out loud.
I don't know if it does.
What?
If he does himself a disservice by saying that, because
you think Vols fans are excited to hear this?
Well, yes, I think they want to hear their athletic director talk about these types of goals. But either way, fair or not, and that's a whole other discussion. Ultimately, that's going to be the standard that Tennessee's football program is held to. Fair or not, in the long run, that's the standard it's held to. So you might as well face it and confront it, because if you don't meet those standards, ultimately, you're going to be out no matter what.
615-737-1045 is the number. 615-737-1045. See, that's an interesting perspective. Because, yeah, I assume that Vols fans want to hear that from their athletic director. But right now, frankly, I don't know, and this is always interesting to me about the Vols fan base, I don't know how they're kind of viewing this season. I think it's just basically it feels like a hands-off approach until they start playing games. And once they're finally, if there is something to give them hope, then they will start to gravitate towards it. But I'm looking at that and thinking, man, I bet a lot of Vols fans are just wanting him to kind of go through the motions at this point. Maybe not go through the motions, but at least publicly go through the motions and understand that, I mean, you're talking about national championships, man. We don't even know what's happening with the NCAA investigation, and we're less than a month out from the season. I don't know that I want to hear Danny White, confident or not, whether that's his role at this point. I don't want to hear from Danny White about national championships. I want to hear about how you're going to get this thing back on track while the NCAA waits to bring the hammer down on you. 615-737-1045. People have called in. Let's go to the phone. Scott is in Bethpage. He wants to talk about Danny White. What's up, Scott?
Hello.
Scott, you're on the air.
Oh, my apologies. Hey, real quick, I'm going to touch off on I called a couple weeks ago, and I mentioned that Heifel had absolutely nothing to do with Nolan coming to Tennessee. It's all Garner.
Yeah, I remember that.
Of course, there are defensive tackles that have dreams of playing for this dude. And if he can just show just a smidget, just a little bit of development with our guys and make them relevant on that front, I almost think it's in the bag. But I'm telling you what's going to get him there. I can see it right now. It's a banner. Big Jim and Big Wally on those Pilot gas station commercials.
Yeah.
His NIL, the dude becomes a millionaire the day he signs with Tennessee. And I'm not sure that happens with the other places that don't know him like we do. I know he's in the top. I know rating services know him, but I'm just saying this state knows him. This state wants him. This dude will never buy another meal as long as he lives. And as far as Danny White talking about national championships, you know what? I used to not be a big fan of it, but I'm so tired of hearing about how far we have to go. Yeah. I like it, and the reason it's the opposite. It's the opposite of what everybody else does with Alabama and Clemson and all those guys. Instead of bowing down and getting on our knees and having to stay on our dadgum knees, it's like, okay, you know what? We're going to talk about it. We're going to mention it. We're going to get everybody excited about it. And obviously Danny White knows what's going on in the program. And I'll bet you something else, Buck. I didn't tell Lucas about this, but I'll bet you he already pretty much knows what we're going to have happen to us. And so, you know, I'm going to go with that. But, hey, man, it's just going to suck for all of us when Lucas gets his own show one day. Thanks, guys.
It's true, isn't it? Oh, especially at how big was your head after all the – I got so many nice messages from people about you doing scoreboards for Titans radio. How big is your head right now? Be honest with me.
Bigger than it like normally is?
Well, yeah, you do. You have an above average cranium, I would say.
Everybody had one thing they got bullied for as a kid.
Oh, was it your head?
I had a big ass head.
Oh, for sure. Especially, I mean, and I love you to death, but that haircut, it doesn't do you a lot of favors. It doesn't do you a lot of favors. And I say this from a place of love. I felt like a proud big brother on Friday with all the nice messages people were sending me about
I
Luke.
appreciate Rhett Bryan, Mike Keith, any faith that even play the smallest role in that broadcast it's a privilege. So no, appreciate them. It's going to be a fun season.
All right, let's get to Ed really quickly before we have to go to break. Ed wants to talk about the Vols. He's in Nashville. What's up, Ed?
Hey, Buck, listen, two things real quickly. One, I have no problem with Danny White saying that. Just getting the message out that's, obviously that's not going to happen in the next 2, 3, 4 years, but that's where we're going.
It's
and
the
so
standard.
I think that's okay. I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah.
Hey, but the question I've got for you is this. For the first time ever, the NCAA has, their ability to sanction has been, I don't know, it's less now than it's ever been that, they've lost some court battles. Do you think that in any way will affect their ability to punish Tennessee? And in other words, you think they may go light because, they don't have the authority, especially in football. I mean, football is run by the Power Five. I mean, obviously the NCAA still has power, but do you think because they have been lessened by the loss of these court battles that they said, you know what, maybe it's time to let go with some of this, power and not hammer Tennessee the way they would, let's say, 30 years ago?
No, Ed, it's a fantastic point. We're going to react to it coming up next because that's a legitimate question, and I want to get into it on the other side. We appreciate the call. If you want to jump in, Vols, Titans, or otherwise, we're open. Don't forget that Chester Rogers, Titans wide receiver, is going to join us at 12:20 as well. A lot more to go in the final hour. Stick around. It's 104.5 The Zone.
J. Mart and Ramon are not afraid to put themselves out there with a bold prediction.
I've been fighting saying this out loud.
Do it, Jay.
I'm picking the Titans to win the Super Bowl.
Tomorrow, starting at 6 on 104.5 The Zone.
Lately, we've been getting a lot of calls and questions about acoustic wave therapy.
receiver Chester Rogers here in just a minute. That's going to be coming up next on the show. Big performance for Chester in the preseason game. You're going to solidify a roster spot anywhere at that crowded wide receiver room. Going to need to make an impact on special teams. He certainly did that on Friday against the Falcons. We welcome your participation as always, 615-737-1045. We're going to talk about wide receivers in general because I want to hone in on a little bit on the Des Fitzpatrick stuff because that I think is this is a player already in his rookie season that's at a critical juncture in his career. And that's not to say that it's done or that, I had people yelling at me in my Twitter mentions, 4th-round pick is a bust, yada, yada, yada. We'll do that in a moment because I think there are reasonable amounts of reaction that you can have while not going full tilt, right? Before we do that, though, I want to touch on what one of our callers brought up earlier about the Tennessee Volunteers and the NCAA violations that may be pending. Basically, the question was, given how many L's the NCAA has taken in the legal system, do we think that there is a potential for a lesser punishment, one that Danny White and the administrators at Tennessee probably already have an idea of what's coming? It's just a matter of when it actually comes down and is made public. And I'm sure there are not negotiations, but conversations between the University of Tennessee and the NCAA to this effect. Basically, okay, here's what's going to happen. We're going to need you to comply with X, Y, and Z. If you do all these things, we won't come down on you harder than we would. But then there's the fact that the NCAA, toothless though it may have been pre this summer, basically, has been made to look even more of a sham organization than it was over the last, what would you say, 3 months? The NCAA, what am I looking to the NCAA for at this point? Not for how to manage a college football season or college athletics through a global pandemic. No, they left that to the member institutions and the conferences.
Not for the college football playoff.
Not for the college football playoff. That ain't their bag either. Not for things like NIL. They've been silent since July the 1st about name, image, and likeness.
They've worked directly against that type of legislation for years.
They worked against it. Then they got 9-0 crushed on their heads by the Supreme Court when they said, yeah, this isn't American. What you do, well, your entire existence is un-American, was basically the summary of that ruling. So now what is the NCAA to us and to the players and to the member institutions? Other than something that just exists to get Mark Emmert a payday and to put together one shining moment at the end of March Madness. Like, what else you got for me? Nothing. So, to the caller's point about, does this lessen potential severity of a punishment for the University of Tennessee? I mean, I'm not a legal expert, so I don't think I could give you specific ways that it could, but I have to imagine that the NCAA, lacking in self-awareness though it has been throughout the entirety of its existence, okay? Mark Emmert got a pay raise in 2020, which is astounding to me. As everything else in sports is hemorrhaging in money, the dude running the most inept organization in sports got a raise. Somebody make that make sense. But then with the University of Tennessee specifically, you got the NCAA on its heels. Now, how much that impacts something like recruiting violation, penalties that they will bring down, the waters become much murkier because now you're talking about a situation with NIL, and yeah, you've got some blurred lines right now as they test out this it's basically a trial period that they're running until next January with name, image, and likeness so they can kind of observe how this thing is going to go because the NCAA, again, said, yeah, hands off until next January. Godspeed. That's their approach to this thing. So in the meantime, you're having people finding out where the boundaries are and how they can push the boundaries. And yeah, we're not going to use this for recruiting, but you got Nick Saban up there at the podium at SEC Media Days. Say, hey, this quarterback for us hadn't even played a snap yet. Look, almost $1 million in endorsements. Like Nick Saban didn't know what the hell he was doing up there at the podium. You got BYU getting walk-on players or scholarships paid by a company coming in with name, image, and likeness legislation and paying for college scholarships that way, which is inherently going to affect somebody's decision to go to BYU or not at some point, of course. But you're looking at precedent. Last year, when the Vols allegedly broke the rules, whether they found reasons to get Jeremy Pruitt fired for cause or not is a different discussion. Feels a bit nefarious, but either way, you got what you wanted. So whether you're going to cast down sanctions off of last year's precedent when the whole world of college athletics has changed in the course of 6 months, what is the justification going to be? You can cite precedent, but precedent was under the old rules. The sport of college football, because it's the biggest revenue generator of all these, college basketball, not really a close second, and then things really fall off after those two. How you hand down basically indictments and sanctions as the NCAA when everybody's already looking at you like, why do we even need you here? And also, this is something that happened last year before you allowed the sport to completely change under your watch and were powerless, legitimately powerless to do anything about it. I don't think the NCAA is going anywhere. Like, I think it's going to take, like, Congress to disband this, like the cartel, basically, to where Mark Emmert is not making millions of dollars for doing nothing, for having no hands-on approach to COVID, for having nothing to do with name, image, and likeness other than this exploratory period where you're just letting things run wild for 6 months and be like, yeah, we like this, we didn't like that. Too late. So how this affects the Vols and their NCAA sanctions, I think it's a curious question. Legal specifics, I'm not going to be able to answer for you. But I do think if you're gonna try and get off a little lighter than you might otherwise have, it comes at a time when the NCAA is already reeling. And everybody is looking at the NCAA, well, with why should we listen to what you have to say? You were literally declared un-American by the Supreme Court in the way that you've conducted your business for 100 years prior to this.
But then could you not see the situation where they try and come back stronger than ever?
What, the NCAA?
Yeah.
To do what?
Try to make their mark.
How?
With whatever sanctions might come down.
With Tennessee?
Right.
Like make an example of them?
I'm just saying the only consistent thing from the NCAA has been inconsistency, whether it was approving transfers, sanctions, anything, holding schools to different standards than other schools. The only consistent thing has been inconsistency, so we have no idea. Yeah, they could slink back into the shadows and realize that everybody knows the jig is up, right? That they don't actually do anything. It's largely a pointless organization in the grand scheme of things. Or I could see them coming down and trying to compensate for all that and bringing down the hammer on Tennessee.
Okay, so what if they do that, and again, like Tennessee does something like take them to court?
Right.
Haven't they had enough losses publicly?
I don't know. It's the NCAA. There's no rhyme or reason.
Oh, no, they appear to be completely out of touch in a way that's delightful because, God bless them, this makes for great sports talk radio content. How disastrous of an organization, the governing body of college athletics, not football, not basketball, all of it. How badly they've done their jobs to open themselves up to this kind of scrutiny and this kind of legal action. Yeah, they can try and bring the hammer down on Tennessee, and Tennessee can turn around and be like, wait, what the hell? No. No. Here's X, Y, and Z reasons why you can't tell us what to do anymore. Because you can't tell anybody else what to do anymore. And maybe you can right now with NIL and COVID, but you've been too chicken bleep to do it.
What I imagine would help Tennessee more than anything is that they did clean house in that instance, fired everybody with cause, different athletic director, totally different, just administration. Everybody overseeing everything that went wrong there, with the exception of Dondi Plowman, is gone and replaced.
Buddy, we're just talking about the NCAA. I can feel the pressure in my forehead just thinking about them and how stupid they are. Like this, it feels like a sinus headache that is forming on my temple right now because I'm trying to figure out why the hell I care about the NCAA when they clearly don't give a damn about anything but stuff lining their pockets at this point. Say health and safety and concern of the student athlete. Man, kick rocks.
They've been deliberating for 8 months on this thing with Tennessee.
They're indecisive. Their decisions when they come to them make no sense. And turns out they don't have legal bearing because the Supreme Court just told them they're dumb. Get out of here.
I'm just saying the NCAA felt they didn't have grounds to levy heavy sanctions against Baylor in a situation where Mike Felder said last week, people should be in jail. Could you not see that playing out the way it did and then coming down with a 2-year bowl ban on Tennessee?
If that happens, and I don't just say this because we're local and because Vols fans are a big part of this audience, that there should be like serious legal action considered against the NCAA. Because the situation, I'd completely forgotten about the Baylor conversation that we had a week ago. Because they were like, it didn't fit the certain criteria of like specific NCAA bylaw.
For impermissible benefits.
Man, I almost just cussed. There is nothing that pisses me off in sports like the damn NCAA. It really does not. So if they try to bring down the hammer on Tennessee as a makeup call because of how stupid they looked against Baylor and their lack of action against Baylor, when Michael Felder of Stadium, as Lucas said, came on this radio show last week and said, people should have gone to jail. And the NCAA said, what are you going to do?
Well, we got nothing.
What are you going to do?
How many years was that investigation?
It's Tony Soprano when his mom dies.
What are you going to do?
What are you going to do?
I was in high school when that scandal happened.
That's so stupid. How does this thing continue to exist in perpetuity despite L after L after L that they take? Oh, let's get away from this. Let's have a conversation with Titans wide receiver Chester Rogers. He's coming up next. Stick around. We're also going to get into this Des Fitzpatrick stuff because I know a lot of Titans fans are concerned. That and more coming up next. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Need a Titans fix? Bam! Just ask Alexa to play 104.5 The Zone. Your home for Titans football and the flagship for Titans radio. 104.5 The Zone.
say, we just got a W in the preseason. They say you can't take any game for granted, so it feels good.
For sure. So how many text messages, how many DMs from people after the punt return on Saturday?
Yeah, my phone was blowing up, man.
Yeah.
It's been a year and a half since I've been on the field, so everyone was excited, to see me back out there.
For sure. Well, I guess, we talked to you a little bit after the game, so obviously you were fresh off the field, kind of, understood the full experience. But
Right.
going back and looking at the film, what'd you kind of see that you liked from your body of work as a whole, not just as a return man, but on the field as a wide receiver as well?
Man, I just looked confident out there. I was confident in the work that I put in the off season. I wasn't second guessing myself. Made the catch. So yeah, I was pretty. It's a lot of things I need to work on, but I felt good. It was the first step.
For sure. So what did you take away that you need to improve on? I know that you're trying to improve your game as a whole every time you step out on the field, but were there something from Saturday that you kind of looked at and said, okay, this is what I need to be working on this week?
It was a couple of plays I wanted back. I got a block on the end on the big defensive lineman. I wanted to use my hands more. We got the edge. I said it. It was maybe another play where I needed to do a man read, zone read. So there's a couple of plays I want to get back, and definitely the punt return. If I had it again, I probably would have stayed left. But we get it. We get it in the regular season.
No doubt. I mean, the element of blocking for a wide receiver is something we talk about with this team all the time, given who you guys got in the backfield and what this offense is set up like. Is that something that you came into the league out of Grambling State knowing that you were going to have to do, something that you were going to emphasize, or is that something that you've kind of adapted with each team that you've been?
No, honestly, coming out of college, my coaches used to tell me, you're going to have to block if you want to make it in the NFL, and it's very true. And then especially coming to the Titans, this is what we live by, effort and finish and blocking, finishing, longer than the guy with the ball.
No doubt. So you spent couple of years, 4 years with the Colts before coming to Tennessee. You got a couple over on them over here. What'd you kind of take away from that rivalry? What's kind of the vibe that surrounds that game in this division?
Man, it's probably if I could compare it to a rivalry game, I would say like the Steelers and the Ravens. Man, this is a very physical game. Whenever the Colts and the Titans play, I love it because we're both gonna run. We're both gonna run the ball, and we're gonna fight to the end.
Now you guys had a couple of quarterbacks there, but Luck was there for the bulk of that.
Absolutely.
Did anybody here talk to you about the fact that he was 11-0 against this team when he retired? Didn't lose
I
a game.
I don't think they
didn't come up once.
They don't want to talk about it, and I understand.
You didn't bring it up?
No, I didn't want to bring it up. I'm a Titan now, so
No question. With this room, you got a lot of vets, you got a lot of young guys. It's a pretty good mix up and down the board. I was watching Fitzpatrick today, and he's somebody who's been working through his first camp, coming as a rookie, trying to overcome a lot of different things, being asked to do a lot of different things. You as a vet, seeing how your career has gone and how you found success throughout the course of it and going into your, what is the 6th training camp for you?
Yes.
What's kind of the message to a dude like that who's trying to find his footing in his first year?
It's funny that you ask because me and Dez probably talked for like 15 minutes pre-practice, and I just, I understand I've been in his shoes before, and I just wanted to let him know that I believe in him, and I want him to believe in himself as much as, me and the coaches and the rest of his teammates do. And it's all about self-confidence, man, and removing all self-doubt and just going out there and doing what got you here, and that's probably my biggest message to Dez.
The mental aspect of it is something that I think we underestimate just as people who watch you guys out on the field. How do you learn how to compartmentalize in those moments? Because it's crazy the kind of things, the highs and lows that you have to balance throughout the course of a week of work and throughout the course of a training camp, all this stuff.
Absolutely. I would be lying if I said it was an easy thing to do, but I just have to always remind myself, never get too high, never get too low. Because like I said, self-confidence in everything. The moment you start doubting yourself, that's the moment, you start making plays. So, yeah, man, it's very mental.
Undrafted out of Grambling State. Right. That's an incredible accomplishment to be able to.
And I walked on to Grambling State at that.
Yeah. So talk about that. I mean, it's a terrible way to ask a question, but like, what is that experience like? Because it's not like it hasn't been done before, but there's not that many dudes that last as long as you have in the league, Chester.
Right. And I kind of I take it personal, and I kind of let it, motivate me, but I honestly think, that journey has prepared me for everything that I've seen, coming through the league. Again, being a walk-on, being undrafted, I've always had to fight the odds. So I definitely appreciate my journey.
What was the moment that kind of most embodies that adversity that you've had to go through? Was there any point, whether it was in college, coming to the pros, trying to find your way after Indianapolis? I know you had a quick stint with the Dolphins before you ended up here. Was there one moment that kind of crystallizes that adversity that you've had to overcome for you?
Honestly, I would say the last just this training camp, just coming off of that injury and then going to the Dolphins right after surgery, knowing I wasn't 100% healthy, getting cut by them, just everything that I went through prior to that, it prepared me for this moment. So being able to go out there in my first game back last, what was this, Friday, Saturday?
Yeah.
That was the moment where I was like, okay.
Yeah.
I was built for this. I've been going through it. I built for it, and the work is paying off.
Marcus Johnson, we talked to him. He's kind of had a similar situation, maybe not the same path, but similar situation as a pro. And he talked about, through so many different years in his career, he's been dealing with like soft tissue injuries and stuff like that. Comes out here, feels right, and he just balls because he knows that he can do this. What is that a similar approach that you've taken? I know you've spoken on the belief in self as well, but is that kind of something that you can identify with in your own room?
Absolutely, and I think that's why me and Marcus are such good friends. We were, I think this is our 4th year together.
Yeah.
So we can, we can relate to each other, and I think Marcus is the perfect example of fighting through adversity and what he was saying, you just got to figure out your routine. You got to figure out your body. You got to figure your way throughout this league and figure out what works for you. And I think he's done that.
One thing that Titans fans have to know about Chester Rogers, because it's this time of year where we get to tell so many different stories, the guys who come through this team. One thing that you have to let the fan base know about yourself.
Man, Titan fans, just know you're going to always have somebody that's going to fight for you, and I'm a playmaker, and you can expect the best from me every Sunday. So that's what y'all need to know.
Chester Rogers, Titans wide receiver, kind enough to give us some of his time out here at training camp. My man, I appreciate you.
Thank you.
It was great, wasn't he? Chester Rogers with some really good insight on what it's like to battle through adversity. A walk-on at Grambling State and then undrafted into the league going on 6 years in the NFL. Not everybody does that. There are very few people, in fact, who have that kind of background. And it's good. I saw him having that conversation with Des Fitzpatrick before practice, why I asked him about it. Because that was, immediately Des Fitzpatrick goes out on the field and starts to struggle on the practice field. Now, he rebounded fine, but there are few people who can convey what it's like to go through those kinds of strife trying to be a professional football player. I won't say that Des Fitzpatrick has had it easy, but compared to Chester Rogers, he certainly has. Now he's at this critical juncture in his career, right, where the head coach isn't impressed with you. Head coach Mike Vrabel in his comments on Saturday, Lucas, I don't know if we have those, brief though they were, Mike Vrabel was asked about what Des Fitzpatrick needs to do to get more snaps in a preseason game. This was his short but sweet response.
What more does Des maybe need to show you in practice to warrant maybe more snaps, earlier snaps in the game?
A lot.
Can you expand on that maybe a little bit?
He needs to show us a lot more in practice.
Not exactly effusive praise from Mike Vrabel on Saturday, coming off the heels of that preseason game that he basically got in as the last wide receiver. Out of all the dudes that are competing for roster spots and didn't do much with his opportunities. Now, at that point in the game, because it was so late, they were running a lot, trying to kill the clock. They're up 20 to 3 or whatever on Atlanta, and they're just trying to get out of there without any more injuries. Right? We've talked about the injuries to Darrington Evans, Trayvon Coley, Tucker McCann, guys who, for Trayvon Coley, I saw Tom Pelissero report that it could potentially be season-ending. We still don't know Tucker McCann. And Mike Vrabel gave us a timeline. Bless him. He said day to day on Darrington Evans. I don't even think he meant to. The idea that we'd even get any kind of injury designation is a victory for the media vultures. But with Fitzpatrick, man, what I have seen from him out on the practice field. Now, here's how I'll clarify this, right? Because there are certain restrictions on what we're allowed to report at practice. What we're allowed to report on at practice is limited to a handful of things, right? We can say, hey, Chester Rogers made a great catch on a pass from Matt Barkley over Breon Borders in practice today. That's about the extent of the detail that we can get into. I can't tell you what the interactions between somebody like Des Fitzpatrick are with his teammates or with his coaches, because technically that is embargoed by the league and the PR staffs that put these rules together. But I will say to you that the coaching staff wants more urgency out of Des Fitzpatrick. It can't be just kind of like slough it off and move on to the next thing. No, you have to start taking this seriously. Yes, he was a fourth-round draft pick. That doesn't mean that the expectations for him are A.J. Brown or, Jarvis Landry or any of these super talented wide receivers. I don't know why I went Jarvis there out of all the wide receivers. That was weird.
Like A.J. Brown or like Randall Cobb or
what? Jarvis Landry. What? I don't know what I did there.
Who's the most random receiver in the league?
I mean, I tried to go with like a good wide receiver.
He's a good wide receiver.
He's a fine wide receiver. There's a million wide receivers that are better than Jarvis Landry. I don't know why I went to Jarvis Landry there. Very odd in the middle of my serious
million
analysis.
Receivers out there that dream to be like Jarvis Landry.
Sure. And Des Fitzpatrick right now is one of them, so get off my back.
You would love that. Love that right now. A.J. Brown, Brandon Ayuk.
Get out of here. So stupid. Hey, Brandon Ayuk's going to be a good player.
DJ Chark.
Keep those names out your mouth, all right? Hey, Des Fitzpatrick wishes right now, okay, that he was any of those guys. Because right now he's a dude who can't get in over the D3 wide receiver from Berry College, Mason Dam Kinsey. I don't think he's going to get cut, but we're in week 1 of the preseason, and everybody's looking at this guy like, hey, buddy, what the hell?
But if he's not a fourth-round pick, we're talking about him being the first receiver gone, are we not?
Yeah, but you can't do the analysis that way because he is a fourth-round pick. Like, you can't take it in a vacuum like that. This player, his circumstances are what they are. He's on the roster because he's a fourth-round pick, and also he's underperformed by any stretch of the imagination. It's not easy to do what he's being asked to do, but if the day-to-day improvement was there, if they felt like he was being smart or opportunistic with the things that have been provided to him. Remember that Josh Reynolds and Julio Jones and A.J. Brown, they haven't practiced a whole lot. There's been plenty of opportunities that Marcus Johnson and Chester Rogers have taken advantage of. You heard that in Chester's voice. He takes it personally. Walk on out of Grambling State. Undrafted in the league. 4 years with the Colts. Gets hurt in Miami. His career could have gone much differently there because they could have used wide receiver help in Miami in 2020 for sure. He ends up on the Titans practice squad. He has to basically wait that whole year out on the COVID list. Not on the COVID list, but as a part of the 16-man practice squad that's kept apart from the rest of the team. They don't practice at the same time as the rest of those dudes did last year. So you're basically isolated for a season. Then you come out here and you have the opportunity. You take advantage of the opportunity. All those opportunities were present for Des Fitzpatrick. In fact, more of them were present for Des Fitzpatrick because he was here working all offseason. So the fact that, I got people telling me, hey, it's early on Des Fitzpatrick. Mike Keith, who is an employee of the team, voice of the Titans, came on this radio show. He wasn't laughing about it. He wasn't sloughing it off as too early. He said, yeah, and you heard what the head coach had to say about it. Hell yeah, I did. Everybody did. Des Fitzpatrick better have heard what he had to say about it. And you know how he responded? By dropping 3 straight balls while the GM is watching the wide receivers run routes on air. Now, again, I didn't see this portion, but I didn't see this portion of practice, but I did note in going through Jim Wyatt's, because I read everybody's observations to make sure I didn't miss anything. In reading Jim Wyatt's observations, he said that that Fitzpatrick caught at least 3 balls the rest of the day, which is fine. But you start the practice where your head coach not 24 hours ago has set out a challenge for you. Hey, we need to see a lot more from this guy for him to warrant snaps over Fred Brown, who has sucked in practice and looked fine in the game. He was good. Marcus Johnson went out there making plays in the preseason game because Ryan Tannehill has been who he's developed the connection with. So I was kind of grading on a curve when he's out there with Logan Woodside, who hasn't really worked a ton with. But for Des Fitzpatrick, there's no excuse because he's been running with the 2s and the 3s. He hasn't been good enough to do anything else. And what they're seeing out of him, what they fear out of him, and what they're trying to coach out of him is this lack of urgency about, hey, man, it's early, but it's not that early. How quickly did things turn? Just look at, and this is a different situation. This is not performance. This is injury. But look at Darrington Evans. Darrington Evans, who missed basically all of last year, comes in, gets all these reps in camp. Derrick Henry's not doing anything but the sand pit. All right, this is your opportunity. Take advantage of it. First preseason game, bad luck, whatever you want to call it, out with a knee. Now we're talking about, hey, what are you going to do? Like, if this is more than day-to-day. Mike Vrabel told us it's day-to-day, but I don't know, I don't know what. Mike, honestly, he missed an opportunity to go for the 5 to 12-week timeline joke. I almost said that as he was walking off the
right
podium.
there on a platter.
It was right there for him. With him and Tucker McCann, I'm like, man, I'm just saying, that's what I do in press conferences. I sit in there, ponder what he's just said, and been like, man, that would have been a really good opportunity for a joke if he'd have taken advantage of it. Maybe next time. But we're already talking about Darrington Evans. It's like, if he's not out there, move on. Now, not move on in the sense of cut him. I'm not saying cut Des Fitzpatrick, but are you gonna make the case for Chester Rogers getting cut over Des Fitzpatrick? Not I. I'm not going to do that with Marcus Johnson. I'm not doing that with Mason Kinsey. And you know what? They're not either. Because all those dudes are getting snaps over the rookie 4th-round pick who just, at this point, either can't figure out how to get his feet under him or doesn't understand the kind of situation that he's in. It's not critical mass. There's more time before they have to make these kind of decisions. But it's not that far away. And Des Fitzpatrick is going to continue. Now that it's out there, he's going to continue to be monitored in this way. Not just by us, but by everybody.
By people in the chat like Vibe Runners that says, is Dez another Dodd/Wilson? Or Tomahawk Chop, who says the Titans missed big on Radens and Fitzpatrick. Got to get this draft thing figured out.
I don't know. There is precious little evidence from Dylan Wright. In fact, I thought he looked fine at right tackle. He got beat at guard on one of the first couple of series out there, but he looked fine at right tackle. And again, he's playing against the competition that he's playing against. Nobody is disputing that. But Radens is not in the same breath as Fitzpatrick at this point. This is not the same kind of criticism that is coming from the head coach. It's hey, listen to me what I'm saying. Because what I'm saying to you is it's not good enough yet. And now I'm letting everybody else know that it hadn't been good enough yet. And it's because we're presenting you with these opportunities, you're not necessarily taking advantage of them in the way that you should be. It's crowded this year in the wide receiver room. If he's playing like this, maybe somebody picks him up, maybe not. We're not at the point where we're talking about cutting Des Fitzpatrick. But I will say, I don't think they're above it. 615-737-1045 is how you react to anything. We'll continue this conversation. Lucas, have you gotten the email that I need you to get?
I have not.
Okay. Well, then we'll save that bit. It's unfortunate because as a Titans fan who apparently I'm going to have to box at open practices later today, and it's unfortunate that we couldn't get the audio because the audio is laugh out loud funny. Regardless. We'll come back. Coming up next. I'm Buck.
Switching your car insurance to Geico is both easy and could save you hundreds. It's the best of both worlds. Like a corgi who does household chores. A chorgi.
Who's a good chorgi? Look at those carpet lines. You're the
podcast. It's the Buck Rising Show. Wherever it is that you find your podcast, subscribe, rate, review, leave us 5 stars. Be very happy with you if you did that. There is a lot more coming tomorrow, too. We're going to go out to the open practice today, provided that the weather holds up. Lucas, you check the Weather Channel in a minute.
I had it pulled up earlier. It didn't look too bad.
All right, I'm going to do that now because when Rhett Bryan, who the only thing that Rhett Bryan of Titans Radio excels at more than his executive producer role on Titans Radio is he is the meteorologist, basically.
Yes, he is the zone's resident meteorologist.
He does a great job. I was complaining about a forecast that I saw for Tampa yesterday, and Rhett's like, no, the latest models tell me.
Yeah, and I'm going off the Apple weather app, which is almost always very unreliable.
No, that can't be trusted. Your opinion is immediately invalidated when you cite that. All right, so I have the Weather Channel app on my phone. Between 5 and 7 p.m. right now, which is when the practice is scheduled to be held for fans to attend for free. There is still the opportunity for you to go, by the way. You can go to the Titans website and you can get your free pass there. They're offering vaccines and stuff like that. One-shot Johnson & Johnson. If you haven't gotten vax yet, you want to. All you got to do is bring an insurance card. That's big. That is major. I hope that people take advantage of that because that's a great opportunity not only to go and watch your football team for the first time because you haven't seen this team, right? You guys haven't had the opportunity to watch them in the way that I've basically seen them now for 4 months. So if you're going today, 3HL going to be broadcasting between gates 8 and 9 in the south end zone. And I will be out there with them at 4:45 for my regular 3HL hit. And then I'll be at the stadium practice. So I hope to see many of you out there as well. But right now, 15% chance of rain between 5 and 7 p.m. It's actually going to be pretty nice, it seems like. Like, I'm looking at the radar now, too, because now with all these, what's the latest tropical storm? Fred?
Yep.
Who names these things? Whatever. Fred has not yet sent enough our way to cause problems. I'm deeply concerned about my trip to Tampa tomorrow and what may linger over us while the Titans are down there with joint practices with the Bucks. All of our coverage of Tampa Bay, by the way, brought to you by Scoreboard Bar and Grill, as was that interview with Titans wide receiver Chester Rogers. Good stuff. Polls.
Not now, Jenny. I'm on the radio. Buck Rising gave me a job. Said something about a poll update. Hope that wasn't at that club where you became a folk singer. Anyway, Buck Rising's producer and correspondent has the final poll update. I'm not a smart man, but I know who Lucas Panzica is.
Who won the football weekend? Tony Jankowski says the Titans certainly did. For the young guys, that was a great showing. Eldon English says Rashad Weaver, 1.5 sacks, 2 TFLs.
It was a good one. It's a good one for the defense. Felt okay about parts of the offense. Ross Reynolds, I'm sorry I didn't know who you were. I hope I didn't embarrass you in front of your mother. It's a tough scene out there.
Lucas Dickerson says not that one Rams fan, which we have discussed. Archie says Nashville SC. They did win the football weekend.
They did. Big. Listen, for any of you who would tell me that soccer is not exciting, 5 goals in the first half between those two teams last night. Nashville SC edging out the win. That was fun.
Yes, they continued their red-hot run of form in Nissan Stadium. Wednesday, great game against Orlando City, and number 3 and 4 teams in the Eastern Conference going at it. Should be fun.
Is that a home game?
Yes, in Nissan Stadium Wednesday night.
All right, 22,000 in the rain last night.
Yeah, how about that?
That's big.
Who lost the football weekend? At football, another F word says the teams that didn't win.
I hate him.
Austin Stanley says Tim Tebow blocking with his eyes closed.
Oh, yeah, we talked about that. Tim Tebow, get the hell out of the
Actually,
NFL.
the majority of these just say Tim Tebow.
Yeah, because what are we doing? We talked about this 2 months ago. Why is he out there? Get Tim Tebow the hell off the field. He's blocking with his eyes closed. He's bouncing off of normal NFL players like he's a rubber ball. It's so weird to look at him out there in that 85 and then just kind of trip and fall over himself. Now, on the first one that he went viral for, the embarrassing block, he did technically make the block because he got physically in the way of the other player from making the play.
One submission for Colts quarterbacks. Do you think Jimmy G lost the football weekend?
I mean, Trey Lance had, flashy 80-yard touchdown, big deal. right? But like Trey Lance, outside of that, if you really watch that game, and I did watch a good amount. I watched certainly those two when they had some snaps in there. Like, I wasn't blown away by Trey Lance the way it seems that everybody else was. I mean, yes, making a throw longer than 80 yards because Jimmy Garoppolo has never completed an 80-yard pass in his life, even with run yards after catch. Like, that's a pretty damning stat. He did look pretty smooth. He's obviously physically gifted. I mean, if anything, the Colts won because now Jimmy G may be available for trade or something like that.
Right. Like, doesn't the buzz out of there feel like it's when, not if, for Trey Lance to take over?
Oh, yeah, but it was, I mean, when they came out publicly pre-draft and said, yeah, we need to upgrade the quarterback position, I'm like, all right, he's done. See ya.
Not exactly a vote of confidence.
Like, what? No, this has been the case for 6 months.
Which Titans player impressed you the most in Friday's preseason game? Easton says everyone's going to say Weaver and Kinsey, which are good answers, but I'll say Sam Ficken and Tucker McCann. Lights out performance from the both of them.
Yeah, and Tucker McCann now super sore after getting rolled up on a dumb play that they ended up scoring. Matt Barkley ended up throwing a touchdown. Was it Matt Barkley threw a touchdown too?
Yes,
Miller
to Forstall.
Yes. Yeah, that's right.
And Dare to be Dope does say, I know it was against third stringers, but Matt Barkley looked pretty good for a guy with barely a week with the team. Also, Fulton looked sharp, showed great improvements over last year.
Matt Barkley's been in the league since 2013. He's playing against 3s and 4s. Chill.
Most said Rashad Weaver, which is fair, and Mason Kinsey, who got to ball out in front of a lot of friends and family, from what I understand.
Yes, he's very adept at the social media. Mason Kinsey is. But yeah, that seemed like a very feel-good moment for him to be able to perform in front of his family. That's a pretty special thing for those guys who are fringe roster dudes and may not have the opportunity in the regular season.
How confident are you that the Vols can land Walter Nolan? Very confident, cautiously optimistic, or he's gaslighting us? 50%, the majority say he's gaslighting us. 41% say cautiously optimistic. 9% are very confident.
Yeah, so the biggest takeaway from that, though, is that the Vols defensive line coach is somebody who is going to continue to be a massive asset for them in the way that he attracts recruits. Rodney Garner is a legitimate, I don't want to say weapon, but he helps you in this game as you try to pursue a player who's the top overall recruit who moved to Knoxville to play high school football. And Rodney Garner is the person who's attracting this kind of talent. It puts you legitimately in the game. I don't know if it ends up happening. It's far less likely to happen than not, but you have to consider all these factors.
Joe said, my hope is increasing. Like they say, it is the hope that kills you. Sam Smith says it's Tennessee. He's going to pick up that UT hat on signing day, throw it halfway across the room, and rip his shirt open and put on that Florida hat.
Until, who was it earlier that called in? Scott from Bethpage and said, until he sees that NIL money, baby.
Out of those three, it's Florida, A&M, and Tennessee, right? Florida probably under the most pressure to sign a Walter Nolan. Dan Mullen has not exactly been keeping up with the Georgias and Bamas of the world in recruiting.
He's not done bad, though, and he does better in the transfer portal.
Have you ever considered buying a Life Alert? Yes or no? 94% have not.
I almost fell down the stairs this morning, but a story for another day. Blaine and Mickey are up next.
Install with Greg Cosell gives you an inside look into the film life of senior producer for NFL Films and NFL Matchup, Greg Cosell. The Install with Greg Cosell, joined by Buck Rising every Wednesday afternoon at 6. Download now.